Another ridiculous proposal from Nova Blackstar, announced Research Director Rex Starweaver, his luminous tentacles flashing with disapproval as he waved the datapad in front of the assembled team. Studying primitive Earth organisms. In space? The Council of Galactic Sciences will never approve this nonsense. Nova Blackstar stood her ground, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with calm determination. The state-of-the-art conference room aboard Space Station Omega-9 hummed with nervous energy as her fellow scientists shifted in their hover seats. The curved windows behind her revealed the stunning expanse of the Andromeda Galaxy, but no one was paying attention to the view. With all due respect, Director, Nova responded, her voice steady. Earth is the only planet we've discovered where life forms actively seek to explore space without proper protection. Their primitive vessels leak like sieves, yet somehow their microscopic life forms survive. Don't you want to know how? From the corner of the room, lab technician Leo Nebula raised one of his 3 hands. His scales shimmered with interest. She's got a point, Director. Just last cycle I found thriving bacterial colonies on debris from their so-called International Space Station. They survived over 50 Earth years in the vacuum. Research Director Star Weaver's tentacles twisted into what passed for a frown among his species. And you didn't report this immediately. Actually, Maya Cosmica chimed in, her crystalline form refracting light across the room. We've all been finding similar anomalies. Nova's just the first one brave enough to propose studying them properly. The room erupted into excited chatter. Nova watched as her colleagues' natural colors shifted through various emotional spectrums from skeptical purples to intrigued greens. She hadn't expected support from Maya, whose previous research focused exclusively on gas giant atmospheres. Quiet Starweaver thundered, his tentacles now a dangerous shade of red. Even if these observations are valid, we can't waste resources on studying primitive Earth biology. The Council. The Council, interrupted a new voice, is very interested in Nova's proposal. All heads turned toward the doorway where Council Representative Orion Thunder floated, their energy form crackling with amusement. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees as they entered a typical effect of their plasma-based biology. Representative Thunder Starweaver's tentacles immediately shifted to a respectful blue. We didn't expect you until next cycle. Clearly, Thunder replied dryly. Their gaze swept the room before settling on Nova. Dr. Blackstar, your preliminary data suggests these Earth organisms aren't just surviving in space, they're adapting to it. Is that correct? Nova nodded, her markings brightening with excitement. Yes, Representative, and if we can understand how they do it, then we might revolutionize our own space exploration capabilities, Thunder finished. Congratulations, Dr. Blackstar. You have full funding and access to all resources on Omega-9. I expect regular updates on your progress. As Thunder departed, leaving a stunned silence in their wake, Nova couldn't help but flash a triumphant pattern at Starweaver. His tentacles had turned an interesting shade of embarrassed purple. The real work was about to begin. Look at these little monsters, Leo Nebula exclaimed, his scales rippling with excitement as he adjusted the quantum microscope. They're not just surviving, they're having a party out there. Nova Blackstar leaned closer to the observation screen, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing rapidly. The specimen container held what appeared to be a piece of ancient human satellite debris, recovered from Earth's messy orbital zone. But it was what lived on that debris that made her markings flash with pure scientific joy. Recording log, Cycle 387, she spoke into her data recorder. We've identified multiple colonies of Earth organisms existing in what should be completely inhospitable conditions. These creatures are not only alive but showing signs of generational adaptation to the vacuum of space. Maya Cosmica floated closer, her crystalline form casting rainbow patterns across the lab's sterile surfaces. That's impossible, she whispered, but the evidence was right there on the screen. Those structures are they some kind of protective shell? Better than that, Nova replied, manipulating the controls to zoom in further. They're modifying their own cellular structure. See these protein chains? They're nothing like the original Earth reference samples. The lab door whooshed open, and Director Starweaver slithered in, his tentacles still showing traces of skepticism, despite the Council's approval. Please tell me you found something to justify this waste of. His voice trailed off as he saw the screen. By the 7 sons of Proxima. I know, right? Leo grinned, all 3 of his hands busy taking measurements. Check this out. When we expose them to direct solar radiation, they don't just survive. They thrive. It's like they're using the radiation as an energy source. The team watched in amazement as the microscopic Earth creatures moved across the specimen, their movements purposeful and coordinated. One particularly large specimen, which Nova had nicknamed Bob, seemed to be leading the others in what looked suspiciously like an organized effort to colonize a new section of the debris. "This changes everything," Maya murmured, her usual scientific detachment cracking. "Our entire understanding of biological adaptation is completely wrong," Nova finished. She turned to face Director Starweaver, whose tentacles had shifted to an intrigued shade of green. "Think about it. While we've been designing complex ships and protective systems, Earth's simplest life forms figured out space travel without any technology at all." A sudden alert from the quantum microscope drew their attention back to the screen. Bob and his companions had begun exhibiting new behavior, forming complex geometric patterns that seemed to deflect incoming radiation. "Are they communicating?" Leo asked, his scales now a bright yellow with excitement. "Not exactly," Nova replied, frantically recording data. "But they're definitely working together. It's almost like they're building something. Director, we need to bring in more specimens. Different species, different debris samples, everything we can find." Starweaver's tentacles twisted thoughtfully. "The Council won't like this. If word gets out that primitive Earth organisms have mastered space survival better than our most advanced species, then maybe it's time we learned from them instead of dismissing them," Nova countered. She gestured to the screen where Bob and his colony continued their mysterious work. "These creatures don't care about galactic politics or scientific pride. They're just doing what Earth life does best, adapting and surviving against all odds." Maya suddenly straightened, her crystalline form vibrating with realization. "Nova, what if we're not just observing adaptation? What if we're witnessing evolution in action? In space?" The lab fell silent as the implications sank in. Even Director Starweaver's tentacles had gone still, a rare sight indeed. "Well," Leo finally said, breaking the tension, "I guess this means we need a bigger lab. And maybe some snacks. Science, this also makes me hungry." Nova smiled, her markings glowing with determination. They had just scratched the surface of this discovery, and somehow she knew that Earth's microscopic space pioneers had many more surprises in store for them. "Get me Representative Thunder," she told her communicator. "They're going to want to see this. And someone please make sure Bob doesn't start building any microscopic spaceships while we're gone." "No, no, no." Nova Blackstar's markings flashed with frustration as she reviewed the proposed experiment protocols. "We can't use standard containment fields. These Earth organisms are too unpredictable. Remember Bob, he somehow chewed through quantum-hardened steel." The newly expanded laboratory aboard Omega-9 buzzed with activity. The space station had allocated an entire sector to their research, though Nova suspected it was more about keeping their potentially dangerous specimens isolated than supporting their work. Leo Nebula looked up from his workstation, where he was calibrating a series of specialized observation chambers. His scales had taken on a concerned orange hue. "Speaking of Bob, he's got competition. The new specimens from that ancient Earth probe are showing similar leadership qualities. I'm calling that one Steve." "We're not naming them anymore," Director Starweaver announced, slithering into the lab with Representative Thunder floating beside him. "This is serious research, not a pet sanctuary." "Too late," Maya Cosmica chimed in, her crystalline form glinting as she manipulated the gravity controls. "We've already named the whole first batch. There's Bob, Steve, Karen, she's particularly aggressive, and the twins, Ping and Pong." Thunder's energy form crackled with what might have been amusement. "As entertaining as your naming conventions are, we need results. The Council is breathing down my neck about resource allocation. Several members think we should be studying the humans themselves, not their hitchhiking microbes." Nova moved to the central holographic display, pulling up their latest data. "Look at these readings. The specimens aren't just surviving, they're creating complex colonial structures. Each group shows distinct characteristics based on their original space debris source. Which is exactly why we need standardized containment protocols," Starweaver insisted, his tentacles waving emphatically. "We can't have cross-contamination between specimen groups." "But that's not how they exist in their natural habitat," Leo argued, his scales shifting to a passionate red. "In Earth's orbit, they're free to interact, to share genetic material to potentially create superorganisms that could eat through our station," Starweaver countered. Maya floated between them, her crystalline surfaces refracting tension, breaking rainbows across the lab. "What if we compromise? We maintain separate observation chambers but include controlled interaction zones. We could study both their isolated and cooperative behaviors." Nova's markings pulsed with approval. "Yes, and we need to replicate different space conditions. Solar radiation levels, temperature variations, micrometeorite exposure." The maintenance department is going to love us, Leo muttered, already calculating the power requirements. Representative Thunder moved closer to the specimen chambers, their plasma form casting an eerie glow on the reinforced walls. How do you plan to gather more samples? Earth's orbit is becoming increasingly crowded with their primitive satellites. The risk of detection. Already solved, Nova interrupted, bringing up a new hologram. We've modified our collection drones to mimic space debris. The humans track larger objects, but these will register as simple cosmic dust on their instruments. Clever, Thunder admitted. But what about containment during collection? If even one of these organisms escapes? Triple-layered quantum fields, Maya explained, proudly displaying the modified collection unit she'd designed. Even Bob couldn't chew through these. Probably. Star Weaver's tentacles twisted anxiously. Probably isn't good enough when we're dealing with potentially invasive species that can survive anywhere. That's what makes them so fascinating, Nova countered, her markings glowing with scientific passion. Think about it, these creatures have turned what we consider fatal environmental conditions into their playground. They're rewriting everything we know about biological adaptation. Leo suddenly let out an alarmed whistle, his scales flashing warning patterns. Speaking of adaptation, you might want to see this. Karen's group has started building some sort of crystalline structure. And is it just me, or does it look like a tiny spaceship? The entire team rushed to his observation station. Sure enough, the specimens had arranged themselves into a formation that bore an unsettling resemblance to a crude vessel, using accumulated space debris as building material. Their learning, Nova breathed, her markings pulsing with a mix of excitement and concern. Not just surviving, but actively adapting their environment to their needs. Like the humans do, Thunder observed quietly. Perhaps we've been underestimating both species. Director Starweaver's tentacles had turned a pale shade of worry. We need more security measures, and maybe some bigger containment fields. What we need. Nova corrected, her markings setting into determined patterns, is to stop treating them like threats and start treating them like the revolutionary discoveries they are. Set up the interactive observation chambers, Maya. Leo, start the collection drones. Let's see what these Earth pioneers can really do. And if they build an actual working spaceship, Starweaver asked, only half joking. Nova smiled, her bioluminescence brightening. Then we'll have an even more interesting report for the Council. Now, who's going to help me explain to maintenance why we need enough power to run a small sun? As the team dispersed to their tasks, Thunder lingered, watching the specimens in their chambers. Fascinating creatures, they murmured. Makes you wonder what other surprises Earth is hiding. Trust me, Nova replied, checking one last time on Bob's group, who appeared to be conducting some sort of synchronized swimming demonstration in zero gravity. We're just getting started by my calculations. This should be completely impossible. Maya Cosmica announced, her crystalline form vibrating with disbelief as she triple-checked the data scrolling across her screens. They're not just adapting anymore, they're evolving. In real time. 30 cycles had passed since the experiment began, and Space Station Omega-9's dedicated research sector had transformed into what Leo affectionately called the zoo. Observation chambers lined the walls, each containing different groups of Earth organisms living their best space lives. Nova Blackstar stood in the center of the lab, surrounded by floating holographic displays showing live feeds from every chamber. Her bioluminescent patterns were practically strobing with excitement. Look at the structural changes in their cellular matrices. They're developing completely new organelles. And that's not even the weird part, Leo added, his scales shifting through shades of amazement. Remember Karen's group? The ones that were building those crystal formations? Well, they've started incorporating station materials into their structures. They're literally growing tiny space stations. Director Starweaver slithered into the lab, his tentacles twisted into complex knots of worry. The science board is here. They're demanding answers about the power consumption and, what in the name of the void is that? He pointed to a chamber where Bob's descendants had arranged themselves into what appeared to be a perfect replica of Space Station Omega-9, complete with rotating sections and tiny flashing lights. Progress, Nova declared proudly. They're demonstrating unprecedented levels of collective intelligence and environmental manipulation. Watch this, she adjusted a control, introducing a burst of solar radiation into Bob's chamber. The microscopic station model instantly rearranged itself, forming a protective shield that not only deflected the radiation but somehow converted it into energy. Impossible, declared a new voice. Senior board member Zenith Voidwalker floated into the lab, trailing an entourage of important-looking aliens. These are primitive organisms from a backwater planet. They cannot possibly. With respect, board member Maya interrupted, projecting her data onto the main screen. The evidence is irrefutable. Look at these genetic sequences. They're not just random mutations. These changes are purposeful, directed. They're engineering themselves. Leo nodded enthusiastically, his scales now a bright yellow of discovery. And they're teaching each other. When we introduced new specimens from Earth orbit, the existing colonies actually showed them how to adapt. It's like they're running their own little space survival school. Preposterous, another board member scoffed. Her gaseous form swirled with skepticism. Next you'll tell us they're developing faster than light travel. Nova cleared her throat meaningfully and brought up another chamber feed. The board members watched in stunned silence as a group of specimens, led by the notorious Karen, demonstrated what appeared to be controlled quantum tunneling between different parts of their enclosure. That's why our power consumption is so high, Nova explained. They're tapping into the station's quantum field generator somehow. We think they're trying to establish some sort of transportation network between colonies. Star Weaver's tentacles had gone pale with shock. Are you saying these Earth organisms have invented their own version of teleportation? Not exactly, Maya said, adjusting her readings. It's more like they've figured out how to surf existing quantum fields. They're basically hitchhiking on our technology, just like they hitchhiked on human spacecraft. Shut it down, Zenith Voidwalker ordered, their form darkening ominously. This research is too dangerous. If these organisms can adapt so quickly, learn so fast, then they're exactly what we need. Nova's markings flashed with passion. Think about it, every spacefaring species in the galaxy relies on artificial protection from cosmic radiation, vacuum exposure, and 1,000 other hazards. But these tiny Earth creatures, they just figure it out on their own. And look at this, Leo added, pulling up yet another chamber display. Remember Steve's group? They've developed a symbiotic relationship with the station's waste recycling bacteria. They're literally cleaning up after themselves. The lab fell silent as a new alert sounded. Everyone turned to watch as Bob's group began constructing something new. It started as a simple sphere but quickly grew more complex, with extending arms and what looked suspiciously like propulsion systems. Are they building a space probe? Maya whispered in awe. Of course they are, Nova said proudly. They've been watching us study them. Now they want to do some exploring of their own. Zenith Voidwalker drifted closer to the chamber, their earlier skepticism giving way to reluctant fascination. The implications. If we could harness these adaptation capabilities. We already are, Nova revealed, bringing up one final display. Remember those quantum field surfing techniques they developed? Maya found a way to incorporate their methods into our ship's shielding systems. Early tests show a 300% increase in efficiency. The board members huddled together, their various forms rippling with intense discussion. Finally, Zenith Voidwalker turned back to the team. Continue your research, they declared. But triple the security protocols. And I want hourly updates on any new developments. As the board members filed out, Leo grinned at Nova. Should we tell them about the dance parties? Dance parties, Star Weaver's tentacles curled in confusion. Maya giggled, her crystalline form sparkling. Oh yes, every time we play human music through the lab speakers, all the colonies start moving in synchronized patterns. We think they're using the vibrations to communicate between chambers. I've got them doing the Macarena, Leo said proudly. His scales shifted to a sheepish purple at Nova's look. What? Science can be fun. Nova shook her head, but her markings betrayed her amusement. Just focus on the quantum tunneling data. And someone please make sure Karen's group hasn't started building a Death Star. Again. You know, Maya mused, watching the continuous evolution unfolding in their chambers, maybe we should be less worried about containing them and more interested in learning from them. They've mastered space survival in ways we never imagined possible. A new alert caught their attention. Bob's group had completed their probe, and it was moving. The tiny construction began a careful orbit of their chamber, collecting data with surprising sophistication. Well, Nova said, her markings glowing with pride and wonder, I guess the students have become the teachers. Let's see what else these remarkable little explorers can show us about surviving in space. Just promise me one thing, Starweaver said, his tentacles twisting with resignation. No teaching them about warp drives. The galaxy isn't ready for faster-than-light tardigrades. Too late, Leo muttered, pointing to Karen's chamber. I think they're already working on that, Nova. Nova. Wake up right now, Leo's voice blasted through the station's communication system, his usual smooth tone replaced by barely contained hysteria. His scales were flashing so many colors they looked like a malfunctioning party light. Nova Blackstar jolted awake in her sleeping pod, her bioluminescent patterns chaotically swirling with alarm. Computer, time. Its third shift, Maya answered instead, her crystalline form practically bouncing through the doorway. But you need to see this. The specimens. They've done something incredible. Minutes later, Nova stood in the lab, staring at displays that made her question everything she thought she knew about biology. Director Starweaver arrived shortly after, his tentacles still tangled from sleep. This better be good, he grumbled. I was having a lovely dream about budget surpluses. Oh, it's better than good, Leo said, pulling up the molecular analysis screens. Remember how Karen's group was experimenting with quantum fields? Well, they didn't stop there. Look at their cellular structure now. Nova's markings flashed with shock. That's not possible. They've completely rewritten their molecular composition. Not just rewritten, Maya corrected, bringing up more data. They've created an entirely new form of matter, one that exists simultaneously in normal space and quantum space. They're using quantum entanglement at a cellular level. Starweaver's tentacles went rigid. Are you saying? They've evolved beyond the need for traditional spaceship protection, Nova finished, her voice filled with awe. They're not just surviving in space anymore. They're becoming one with it. The central observation chamber drew their attention. Inside, the colonies had arranged themselves into complex geometric patterns, their bodies shimming with an otherworldly glow. As they watched, a group of specimens simply vanished. Where did they go? Starweaver demanded, his tentacles now a pale shade of panic. Leo checked his instruments, his scales pulsing with excitement. According to these readings, they're everywhere and nowhere. They're existing in a quantum superposition. They've basically turned themselves into living wormholes. That's not the best part, Maya said, her crystalline form vibrating with intensity. Watch this. She initiated a controlled radiation burst into the chamber. Instead of avoiding it or shielding themselves, the specimens absorbed the energy, their bodies glowing brighter. Then, in a display that defied conventional physics, they began creating new matter from the absorbed radiation. They're not just adapting to space, Nova breathed, her markings pulsing with revelation. They're mastering it. Everything we know about space colonization, it's all wrong. We've been trying to bend space to our will, but these Earth organisms, they've learned to bend themselves. The implications for space travel, Starweaver's tentacles waved thoughtfully. If we could replicate this. We already are, Maya announced proudly, pulling up another screen. I've been analyzing their molecular changes. These aren't random mutations, they're following a specific pattern. A pattern we can potentially synthesize. Leo nodded enthusiastically, his scales now a brilliant green of breakthrough. Think about it, ships that don't need traditional hulls or life support systems. Colonies that could exist in the harshest environments. We could explore parts of space we never dreamed of reaching. And all because of microscopic Earth creatures that hitched a ride on primitive human spacecraft, Nova mused. She turned to the chamber where Bob's group was now performing what looked like a quantum physics demonstration. They're not just surviving. They're thriving. And they're showing us how to do the same. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the lab. Red warning lights flashed as multiple instruments registered massive energy spikes. What now? Starweaver groaned. They rushed to Karen's chamber, where the specimens had arranged themselves into a perfect spiral pattern. As they watched, the pattern began to spin, faster and faster, creating what appeared to be. Is that a stable micro-singularity? Maya asked in disbelief. They're making their own shortcuts through space-time, Leo exclaimed, his scales now flashing with pure joy. These little guys just invented their own form of faster-than-light travel. Nova's markings pulsed with sudden understanding. Don't you see? This is why Earth life is so successful. They don't try to conquer their environment, they become whatever they need to be to thrive in it. While we've been building bigger ships and stronger shields, they've been quietly mastering the fundamental forces of the universe. The Council needs to see this immediately, Starweaver declared, his tentacles now showing colors of determination and excitement. This changes everything we thought we knew about space exploration. Wait, Leo called out, checking his readings again. There's something else. The quantum field modifications they developed, they're not just using them for travel, they're communicating through them, across all of space. Nova stared at the chambers in wonder. They're building a network, a quantum web spanning the entire galaxy. They're not just adapting to space, they're claiming it as their home. Maya's crystalline form sparkled with revelation. Maybe that's what we've been doing wrong all along. We've been trying to make space suit us when we should have been learning to suit space. As if in response, Bob's group formed a perfect model of the galaxy, each specimen representing a star system connected by shimmering quantum threads. Well, Nova said, her markings glowing with pride and anticipation, I guess it's time to let the galaxy know the real space pioneers aren't the ones building the ships. They're the tiny stowaways that came along for the ride. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Science Council buzzed with anticipation. Representatives from 1,000 worlds packed the circular arena, their diverse forms creating a living rainbow of alien life. At the center podium, Nova Black Star stood ready to present their findings, her bioluminescent patterns steady with confidence. Distinguished members of the council, she began, what we discovered on Space Station Omega-9 will revolutionize our understanding of life itself. The holographic displays activated, showing their specimens in action. Bob's group demonstrated their quantum navigation techniques, while Karen's colony casually manipulated space-time in their chamber. The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Lies shouted a gaseous council member, their forms swirling with disbelief. No primitive Earth organisms could achieve such feats. Leo stepped forward, his scales glowing with challenge. Oh really, he activated a portable containment field, releasing a small group of specimens. The aliens nearest to the podium jerked back in alarm. The specimens, unperturbed by their audience, began constructing a perfect miniature model of the council chamber, complete with quantum-enhanced acoustics. As you can see, Maya added, her crystalline form sparkling under the chamber's lights, they're quite capable of adapting to any environment, including this one. Director Starweaver slithered forward. In just 60 cycles, these organisms mastered quantum mechanics, developed new forms of matter, and created their own faster-than-light travel system. While we were studying them, they were studying us. Nova gestured to the specimen display. We thought we were the masters of space travel. We built massive ships, complex protection systems, artificial environments. But these tiny Earth creatures, they simply changed themselves to suit the universe. Preposterous, declared Senior Council Member Zenith Voidwalker. Next you'll tell us the humans planned this. A new voice rang through the chamber. Actually, they did. Representative Thunder floated to the podium, their energy form crackling with amusement. Show them, Nova. Nova's markings pulsed as she activated the final display. We found this in the Earth's historical database, a research paper from their early space age, theorizing about organisms capable of surviving in space. They didn't just know about these creatures, they deliberately sent them into orbit. The chamber exploded in chaos. Council members argued, some denying the evidence, others demanding immediate action. Through it all, Bob's group continued their architectural demonstration, now adding improvements to the council chamber's design. Order, the Grand Chancellor's thunderous voice silenced the chaos. Their ancient form, composed of pure thought energy, focused on Nova. What are the implications of these discoveries? Everything changes, Nova replied simply. These organisms have shown us that our approach to space exploration was fundamentally flawed. We tried to force our way through space. They showed us how to become one with it. Maya stepped forward. We've already begun adapting their quantum field techniques to our ships. Preliminary tests show we can reduce power consumption by 90% while increasing travel speed exponentially. And that's just the beginning, Leo added, his scales shimmering with excitement. Their molecular adaptation capabilities could revolutionize colony development. Imagine settlements that grow and evolve with their environments. The Grand Chancellor considered this. And what of the humans? If they knew about these capabilities, records show they suspected Thunder interrupted. But they were too focused on their mechanical solutions to fully explore the biological ones. Their oversight is our opportunity. Nova's markings flashed with sudden inspiration. Or perhaps, their gift. The chamber grew quiet. Think about it, she continued. These organisms came from Earth. They evolved alongside humans. What if this wasn't an oversight? What if they were waiting for someone else to discover the potential they knew existed? In the containment field, Karen's group had begun demonstrating their space-time manipulation techniques, creating tiny wormholes that sparkled like stars. The humans have a saying, Leo said, his scales shifting to thoughtful blue. Sometimes the best discoveries come from looking in your own backyard, or in this case, their orbital debris field. The Grand Chancellor rose, their thought energy form expanding to fill the chamber. The Council recognizes the significance of these discoveries. All research materials will be made available to the scientific community immediately. And they paused, focusing on the specimens still happily redesigning the chamber. Perhaps it's time we reconsidered our classification of Earth as a primitive world. Nova smiled as her team celebrated. In the containment field, Bob's group had finished their improvements to the council chamber model. Remarkably, the acoustics actually sounded better. You know what this means, Maya whispered, her crystalline form vibrating with joy. We'll have to thank them. The humans, Leo asked. No, Nova replied, watching as their specimens began packing up their quantum tools, ready to return to their chamber, our tiny teachers, the real pioneers of space exploration. As if understanding, the specimens arranged themselves into a perfect formation, their bodies glowing with quantum light. For a moment, they seemed to exist everywhere at once, past, present, and future merged in a display of pure possibility. Well, Director Starweaver said, his tentacles showing colors of pride and amusement, I guess this means we need a bigger research budget. And maybe some dance music. They do love their dance parties. The council chamber, newly improved by Earth's smallest space explorers, filled with laughter. And somewhere, in the vast expanse of space, countless other microscopic pioneers continued their work, quietly showing the galaxy how to truly become one with the universe. They were no longer just survivors. They were the future of space exploration itself. And they were just getting started.